Good evening and welcome to Millennium Stage. And now please give a warm welcome to Bassey Ikpi and Marc Bamuthi Joseph.
Hello, good evening. How you guys doing?
Hello, hello, hello.
This is Bassey Ikpi. You can feel free to just give her another round of applause because she is that chick. She wrote this book. What's the book called?
I'm telling the truth, but I'm lying.
Okay, so that's what we're here to talk about, this book. Does anybody have this book? All right. Fairly 2/3 of y'all are heathens. And I imagine for the people watching at home, you should buy the book. You should buy the book. If not, I will curse you, but I will not use a 4-letter word to curse you because this is the Kennedy Center.
They told us seconds before we came out here that we weren't allowed to curse. And that ruins everything.
Yes, so a lot of this will be conducted in mime because, Bassey, what did you write?
What did I write? I don't know. I wrote a book about I don't even want to say it's my life because it doesn't feel complete, but about a particular segment of my life, about my mental health, my emotional wellness. And I was hoping to make it so that people understood what was going on from the inside out. And I hope I did that. I don't know.
I think you did it. I have had the great privilege of reading this book. It's been out since Tuesday
Of last week, yeah.
of last week, and it's already in its second printing.
Yeah.
I've kind of indexed our conversation, and hopefully we can all take part in this index conversation, not just about form, but also the journey of a mother, the journey of a daughter, of an artist,
Yep.
and how we might find ourselves in the narrative that you've constructed for us. In order to help us, I've not only taken copious notes, because, but there are also some passages that I wanted to read, if that's okay with you.
Yep. It's
So
an honor to have Marc Bamuthi Joseph reading my words. An honor.
And I am honored to read the work. So I want to talk a little bit about memory. I'm on page 16 for anybody who's like in church, you want to follow along. The poem begins, "Today I remember my grandmother as she attempts to connect with her second children. I barely remember my maternal grandmother. I've attached every word of wisdom or demonstration of strength of character that has taken up residence inside me to this woman who holds my mother's face. But the truth is, I didn't know her. I remember very few things about her. I remember her feeding me, but that could have been anyone. I remember her walking me through the maze of produce at the market, but that could have been anyone. My mother tells me my grandmother wouldn't take me when she left for nursing school, that she refused to even see us off when we left for America. But I like to think she whispered words of strength to me before we left. I've written about how she taught me to carry a load. I've written a lot of things of which I'm uncertain. I remember a grandmother who wanted me. I write of a grandmother who taught me how to carry a load on my head. Back straight, head high, walking into the distance, and created songs to encourage me to eat, even as my mother tells me that her mother refused me. That when my mother had to go away for school, her mother refused to care for me, turning me over to various aunties and uncles and cousins instead. I don't know why I remember all the hands that held me and fed me and taught me as being my grandmother's. I never thought of her in earnest until I wrote of her in a poem. The poem wasn't even really about her. It was about me and feeling disconnected and belonging nowhere and to no one. So maybe it was about my grandmother after all. Maybe I did know. Maybe I know that it was not her hands or her voice or her coaxing food into me. Maybe I need to remember those hands as hers, because I need to remember feeling wanted as early as I possibly can.
I don't remember writing that.
Well, this is, so much of this book is grounded in the disconnect between memory and the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about whether you actually have to remember something in order for it to be true?
The quick answer is no.
Yeah.
When I started writing this book, I read a lot of books about how to write a memoir. I read Mary Karr's The Art of Memoir. And one of the things she says in that book is, if you don't have a good memory, don't write a memoir. And I didn't think that was fair, because I think it puts a lot of weight on historical fact and not enough on emotional fact. I think something can be true. You can feel something, you can have an emotional reaction to something and not know whether or not that thing actually existed. And for me, what's more important is that emotional reaction, that emotional fact.
Yeah.
So for the fact that my memory is so patchy as far as details, as far as being able to Google or even just ask somebody who was there about their experience. We have the same experience, but our versions of it are different. It doesn't make any of it less true. And that's where I was going when I was writing the book. I relied on my emotional facts and the ability to connect. I know I got from point A to point B. I need to figure out how I felt on that journey. So that's what that was.
This idea of emotional facts feels very pervasive in the country as we know it, the way that we curate information, particularly within the context of a rapidly, let's just call it a contentious relationship with science, at least at the federal level. This thing of your truth, beginning with the title of the book itself, can you talk a little bit about how the title came to be, how a tenuous relationship with the truth became a matter of fact for you?
The title was a mistake in that it was supposed to be a placeholder. The book was called something else. It was called Making Friends with Giants. It was a totally different book. It was supposed to be more motivational, more self-helpy, but it didn't connect with me, and I had a difficult time writing it. I had a difficult time connecting with it. I had a difficult time understanding why I was doing it. And my editor noticed in conversation that a lot of the essays in the book, whatever book I was writing at the time, had the words, "I'm telling the truth, but I'm lying. She's telling the truth, but she's lying. You're telling the truth, but you're lying." And all of that meant was, I want to believe what you're saying, but I know you're not telling me the truth, and my need to accept you and what you're saying is more important than what the facts are. Or I want to believe that this is true. What I'm saying to you, this is what my memory tells me. I know that there's a possibility that it cannot be. Historically, factually, chronologically, it can't be true. But what's important to me right now is the fact that there's an emotion attached to that memory, and that memory is what has stayed with me longer and stronger than whatever the facts are. So what do I put more weight on? What do I choose to tell? Do I sit here and tell you, things that you can Google and fact check and find in textbooks, or do I tell you where that thing led me on a journey and what that emotional journey was? And that's where the title comes from. It gives me an out in that my experience is different than my sisters or my brothers or my ex-boyfriend or what have you. But there's a reason why I remember it that way, and I want to honor what that is, what that reason is.
You bring the reader really magically and really powerfully into the fact of your emotional matter. I might add that you do it what I would call courageously. I don't know what you would call it.
You can call it.
And there's a lot of this book that's hard. But I've heard you say that this is a book of nonfiction short stories.
Yes.
So I want to read another passage and talk to you a little bit about the form of the nonfiction short story. This is out of control. Thank God for Post-its and stickies. The inventor of the sticky, wherever you are, this one's for you. This is a nonfiction short story called This Is What Happens. I'm on page 123, church. 7 p.m. The bathroom is clouded by steam. I watch as it fills the room and covers the mirror. I pull the curtain closed. I want to own something ugly and destroy it. 8:17 p.m. I stay in as long as I can, wash every part of my body more than once. The spaces between my toes, the curves behind my ears have never been so clean. When there's nothing left to scrub raw, I sit at the bottom of the tub and let the water beat me. 8:20 p.m. I need to get out before I drown. I wonder if I could drown. It would be an accident. 8:25 p.m. I managed to drag myself out. I miss the pounding of the water already. I briefly considered taking another shower. I can feel fatigue eating through my bones. 8:27 p.m. There's something familiarizing. I've learned its pattern. It starts at the back of my neck, tightens, and spreads to the space between my shoulders. In less than a second, it will hit me squarely in the chest, take my breath, rush my heartbeat, turn my knees to water. I don't have time for it now. I'll just have to shake it off, try to steady myself. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm only tired. I only need to sleep or eat. I will not shiver and shake with it. 8:30 p.m., this thing disappears as quickly as it appeared. 8:31 p.m., I sit on the edge of the bathtub and stare at my feet, waiting for it to come back. 8:32 p.m., I don't know what's wrong with me. 8:35 p.m., I feel a chill and remember the cooling bathroom and reach for my towel. 8:38 p.m., in my bedroom, I dig through layer after layer of pants and shorts and sweatshirts for something to wear. None of them will prevent the thing should it choose to come back. The pink flannel won't help you. The 8th grade gym shorts won't encourage you to eat. The gray fleece won't invite sleep. I shake my head to stop the words. I need my black Old Navy sweatpants. They will make this place feel like home. They are oversized and soft and fading. I search through t-shirts and bras and tank tops and towels. I cannot find them in this mess I've created. 8:40 p.m. I sit on the floor. I can feel the thing again. This time I don't stop it. The frustration is too much. How many times has your face been wet the last few weeks? How often have you tasted the salt? When was the last night you weren't huddled on a floor? I hold my head and sob until my stomach aches.
Jeez.
Well, yeah, so I've never felt so inside. I've rarely felt so inside an author's experience. And this is a unique experience, at least unique in the world of literature to be portrayed in this way. You talk about reading about memoir, but yours is fairly uncharted territory, at least in the popular culture, and certainly the form has a lot to do with that. Can you take us through maybe the construction of that essay, where it came from, and how it is that your form has evolved, how you've been able to confidently commit the form to page the way you have?
First of all, thank you for reading that. That was amazing. You're an actor. That essay was one of the ones that I wrote in the moment. During the course of a 24-hour day, I was on tour with Def Poetry Jam, and then I was also doing concurrent university shows or whatever. And I had 24 hours where I was home, 24 hours that I needed to get myself together and prepare myself, and all the things that were going wrong, all the depression, anxiety, mania, all the things that I didn't have the language for at the time. I had 24 hours to get it out of my system before I got back on a plane. And the journey with that was for me to try to document so that, I don't know whether it was for me, I wasn't meant to share that with anyone, but so that I could understand what was going on, because I was feeling so much, so quickly. All of that happens within 5 minutes, but it feels like a lifetime. And one of the critiques I've had about that particular essay or that particular story is that in the middle of it, people are exhausted and they're tired. And I'm like, yes, it's exhausting and it's tiring. And exactly that moment when you are tired of reading it, I'm tired of feeling it. But it keeps going, and it has to keep going. Years ago, when I got it in my head that at some point in my life I wanted to write a book, I wanted to do so in a way that made sense of this thing that did not make sense to me, which was, you know, we have all kinds of labels. We call it bipolar 2, anxiety, depression, hypomania, mania, all these different words that when you read them don't mean anything. And I wanted them to mean something. And a lot of, if you went through the book, you could go simultaneously through like the DSM and check off symptoms. But I wanted people to know and understand what those symptoms meant, what they really feel like. More than just, oh, this is what anxiety is, textbook definition. This is what anxiety feels like. This is what anxiety and depression and hypomania, how they exist at the exact same time and what it does to somebody's brain and how excruciating and how painful, like physically uncomfortable it is to live with that. Because a lot of times I think that when we read memoirs specifically about mental health, the journey always veers towards the clinical. And I can't say I wanted to avoid it because it wasn't intentional, but I wanted to make sure that people walked away with an understanding of something that they never considered, especially that physical discomfort. Because I think when people think of mental health, it's all here. But when you understand the physical discomfort, the physical anguish, you know, when you read it like you wrote it, but like the pounding of the water, like that sensation is important because it's a feeling that matches the pounding in your head. So you look for all these sensory things that match what's going on in your head. That's what a lot of reasons why. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, but people who cut, they want that physical pain to make sense of the emotional pain. And that's that same kind of thing I was trying as best as possible to convey. And I hope I did that.
You did that, yo. Like, you did that. I mean, the essay that I just read from starts at like 11 a.m. maybe on one day, 11:45 a.m. on one day, and it continues pretty much until 11 or so the next day, maybe earlier than that.
About
and
9.
there's this, you know, so the thing that I just read was like from 7 to 8:30, which is a fairly comfortable time of the evening. But then it's 2 in the morning. And then it's 3 in the morning. And I don't know if anybody watching or if anybody in the audience has ever been up at 3 in the morning when really you just needed to go to sleep. Has that ever happened to anybody? Are like the two of us just the only ones? So it's that. It's the fact that as a reader, you've experienced a parallel version of what you're describing, but under much different conditions and with a different thing that's happening inside. And as a reader, I was completely pulled into your journey. So thank you. There's another part of your journey which I feel like I share. We're born roughly around the same time, same place.
Well, we're roughly.
Older. I'm a little bit older.
I'm just kidding.
No, you're not kidding. It's cool. It's cool. I have gray in my beard. It tells the truth and lies. But you talk about the Challenger explosion as a specific trigger, and I'll try to get through this. This is on page 25.
Are you guys really following along?
Some of y'all,
God,
should,
some of y'all
for real,
are, okay.
For real. Like everyone should get this. Like it should be required reading. It's so powerful. You write, on air, Tom Brokaw was attempting to make sense of the thing we had just witnessed. He struggled. his voice heavy with grief and confusion. Then there was a pause, and his familiar face fell for a split second before he offered the news he had just learned. Ladies and gentlemen, there are no survivors. There are no survivors. There are no survivors. That lived like an echo in my head long after he said it. The teacher pulled herself together enough in time to turn off the TV so we wouldn't see the wreckage, but it was too late for me. I was already imagining the mangled mess of metal spread on the ground, the pieces of flesh and limbs littered across Florida. I wondered if those who came to watch were sprayed with debris and blood. The quaking in my body returned. I can't imagine we just returned to math and reading groups. I can't imagine we just imagine us just rolling into the blacktop for tetherball and soccer at recess. At some point, we went home. At some point, we stopped discussing it. At some point, our lives continued. My life was forever changed. Tom Brokaw's "There Were No Survivors" lived in my chest. I didn't understand who got to choose who survives and who dies. God, I guess. But what was the criteria? Maybe if I hadn't blinked at that exact moment, maybe if I hadn't turned my head, or if I had been better at sitting still, those people, that teacher wouldn't be dead. Those families wouldn't be in such pain. If I hadn't looked away, if I hadn't been so concerned about my own discomfort and taken my eyes off those 7 people, if I hadn't upset mommy or disappointed daddy, if I'd studied harder for the math test, if I had run faster, if I tried harder, if I was better, if I was better, if I was better, there would have been survivors. It's a lot. The Challenger explosion, not unlike September 11th, is one of those moments that coheres, I think, in American consciousness.
Yeah.
Where were you physically, geographically, when that happened?
Stillwater, Oklahoma,
Okay. So your parents are from where?
Nigeria.
And you were born?
Nigeria.
So you were born in Nigeria, and you're in the 4th grade?
Between the third and fifth.
Between the 3rd and 5th grade.
Yeah.
You're a Nigerian immigrant living in Stillwater, Oklahoma,
Yes,
and
sir.
the American rocket explodes. It kills 7 people. So there's one part of this passage that's about you as a little girl beginning to assimilate the chemical and experiential reality that is going to be your journey moving forward.
Yeah.
But there's another part of this, which is you're like 8, 9, 10 years old living in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage your health as a Nigerian immigrant in a part of the country where I imagine there aren't very many people like you? In other words, how do you maintain a sense of cultural wellness even as all this is going on?
Much easier than you would think.
Okay.
I grew up in a very Nigerian household. What makes up culture? Food. I don't speak the language because my parents wanted they wanted me, because I was born in Nigeria, to speak unaccented English. So I was taught to speak English as quickly as I could learn it, which is why I don't speak Yakur. But I didn't know there was a difference until I left and looked back on it. A lot of some of the things I didn't write about during that time, the reason why the Challenger affected me so much is because during that time in Nigeria, there were a lot of coups and government disruption. So it felt like this, when you're a kid, you make these correlations that don't really exist, right? So I would lose a spelling bee, and then there would be a violent coup in Nigeria. And in my brain, those two things were linked. So I was connected to Nigeria in that way, but only in ways that seemed tragic.
Yeah.
The constant reminder that everyone had left everything and came to this country so that I would have a better experience, so that my siblings would have better experiences. And if I failed whatever that felt like to me, whatever failure felt like or was to me, if I failed in any way, I was disappointing not just my immediate family, but an entire village and country of people. And that added pressure led to some of the early anxiety.
It, I'm struck by those connections and the weight that as a young person, as a child, you place yourself in a way. It's really magical and beautiful and kind of metaphysical that you connect yourself to the rest of the world. But you connect yourself to the rest of the world not in a like butterfly effect romantic kind of way, but in terms of an erosion.
And a Challenger explosion.
Yeah. I'm also struck by this current moment and grappling with the political gravity of the moment. The thing of, the rainforest or the Amazon forest is burning, and here we sit. And our relative, the chaos of our environment, how it is that we find ways to situate ourselves in a kind of personal stability, even as our environment would suggest that maybe we should just say 4-letter words and be naked.
Right.
So, what is it about that experience do you take to this present moment in terms of trying to reconcile what's happening in the world around you and the volatility that you're experiencing internally?
I'll be 100% honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't participate.
Yeah.
I can't afford to participate.
Yeah.
3 years ago, 2016, I was in one of the worst depressive episodes of my entire life, to the point where I wasn't going to make it. I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. 2016 was the election.
Yeah.
2016 was when we got, what's his face, Toupee fiasco in the White House.
Wait, do we hear the Toupee fiasco? Did we just hear that? Because... Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the amount of anxiety I felt when he was elected, a year after he was elected, 2 years after, I had to make the conscious decision to filter the information that I received, because I know from that young age that, and not only that, I have a 12-year-old son who I see the same sort of anxiety when it comes to world issues. So in order to protect us both, I have to stay away from it. Every once in a while, because people won't let you not know about things.
Yeah.
I do have to think about it, and I do have to face it, but I have to be very mindful of how I do so. I cannot consume trauma. I cannot consume tragedy. We live in a world now that information is so rapid. And not just information, but the opinions about the information. You're told that if you don't feel sufficiently bad about this thing that has occurred, then you don't care.
Yeah.
If you don't express how bad you feel about this thing that has occurred, then you don't care.
Right.
And I have learned to disabuse myself of that notion and that relationship with information. And I don't feel like I need to prove how much I care to the world in quick tweets.
Yes.
I have time to process the information before I have an opinion on it. I have the time to not have an opinion on everything that happens. I know the world is burning quite literally.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. But in order for me not to feel responsible for the fires in the Amazon, I have to be very selective about how much of that information I take in. I know it's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know it's happening. I don't need to watch footage of it happening. I don't need to read about people's opinions on why it's happening. And I don't recommend that, in that I think that being informed is important, but being informed only as much as you can stabilize yourself is important. I don't think it's necessary to consume tragedy and trauma in order to feel alive. And I think that's a lot of what's happening right now.
That's what's up. Go ahead and you can give that dap. The broad conversation that your book has initiated is very intimate,
Yes.
and it's a lot of its potency and its power is in your transparency. And so, it's a little weird. I've experienced the thing of being like, here's all of me. And again, I think the way that you do it is elegant and lyrical and gorgeous. You talk about love
Or something.
or something like it.
Oh God, which one are you gonna read?
Derek.
Derek is here.
Oh, I didn't mean to do it.
That's Derek right there. Hi,
Sorry,
Derek.
I'm not gonna look at you, Derek. I'm not gonna do it. But I'm gonna.
You're welcome, Derek.
Okay, cool. Well, this is actually lovely. I'm glad, and I'm not gonna read. I'm not gonna read about what's his face because
He's not here.
he's not here. But Derek was beauty. With Derek, there was never a fear of being too much or too little. No conversation that challenged the way you breathe, no discrepancy or faded memory, no attempt to convince you that what was, wasn't, or what did, hadn't happened. Derek was necessary and sentient truth. He was a tenderness and unearned kindness. There was never worry of him turning to ash in your hands, so you did what you had to do and you left him before you broke and buried him. He is the only one I regret being too broken for. If I could have allowed myself to... I know! Sorry, Derek, you showed up, dog! He is the only one I regret being too broken for. If I could have allowed myself to love him, maybe this life would have shaped itself differently. Maybe I wouldn't have had to wait to break. Maybe I wouldn't have broken at all or fallen. Or maybe he would have caught me. Or maybe I would have destroyed him. I think I would have destroyed him. Yeah. No, she's dope, yo. And for real, the books are like on sale back there. So, and on Amazon and at Kramer Books and
Everywhere
the Barnes
books
and
are
Nobles
sold.
that are left.
The Barnes and Noble.
Do you have advice for those of us that are in love?
No,
No.
you don't want my advice.
Yeah. Well, I actually do want your advice, and
Okay.
I actually have sought your advice. So I'm just taking this to the streets. But to love someone who struggles with their own wellness, what would you say to me, or would you say to Derek, or say to someone who?
Don't mention Derek. He's right here.
Sorry, dog, but it already happened.
And Mary.
Sorry,
God.
sorry.
Okay.
But it
good.
already happened.
Yeah.
But how do you, or how would you suggest that those of us who love are in love with folks who are struggling in this particular way? How do we best support ourselves and best support our partners?
The most important thing is to support yourself, because I think that quite often, and this has been my experience as well, people want to rush in and do all the padding
Yeah.
and all the cushioning and break all the falls. And quite often, when you think about that, it's more codependency than anything else.
Yeah.
They want to feel needed.
Yeah.
So in order for someone to feel needed, the person that they're directing or projecting on needs to need.
Okay.
Therefore, they're never fully whole.
Okay.
They're most often quite broken, quite often.
Yeah.
In order for you to take care of somebody who is struggling with their wellness, you have to not be struggling with your own, right?
Yes.
I always advise people when they ask me about this certain thing, you should be in therapy, because therapy will teach you the best way to deal with yourself and in turn deal with others and do what's best for them.
Yes.
Patience is important, but not the kind of patience that gives carte blanche for anything to happen.
Yeah.
One thing that I've always said, and I stress, and quite often, because Kanye West comes up often, your mental health is a reason, it's not an excuse. So if someone isn't doing the work,
Feel free to dap, yo. Yeah.
y'all don't stop, no. If someone isn't doing the work and meeting you where you want them to be,
Yes.
there's a patience that takes place because there are steps that are slower, that are steadier, but you can't rush to get them and pull them.
Yeah.
And then you also can't watch them sort of just struggle without any kind of support. And that support is therapy. That support for many, and I know people don't like to talk about this, is medication.
Yeah.
Something that bolsters, that crutch, that boot, that emotional boot that gives you, the strength and the movement. The only thing that I can stress more than anything else is the opportunity to welcome people back once they've done that work. I know that for me, with my family, with my friends, with loved ones, with people who don't even like me, that opportunity to be a better version of myself after so long not being the best version of myself and being welcomed back, given another chance because I've done the work, has been the most important thing. And knowing that there is room for that, knowing that there's a place for me somewhere, knowing that once I do this work, once I do the therapy, and if I, like I said in 2016, increased it from once a week to 3-4 times a week, doubled my medication, did the work, and found my way back to the people I either hurt or forgot or left behind or completely just dismissed because they were trying too hard to help me when I wasn't prepared to help myself. People couldn't want my wellness more than I wanted it for myself.
That's what's up.
And that's the base bottom line of it.
Word up. Thank you. We mentioned, or you alluded to deaf poetry, and I think I remember the first time I saw your face. I remember it was 2001. It was in Seattle. Yeah, it was you and Mata Del Valle in the back of the room, and I was like, oh. And I remember you first as a poet. You talk about being on tour, and this is kind of a pre-diagnose, like something is up, and you know something is up. And the passage that I read earlier takes place in the middle of the tour, but it hasn't been named yet. And without going into the book, because I definitely want to get into questions from the audience, there's a climactic moment while you're on tour where essentially you're unable to perform. And it occurs to me that, when you mentioned Kanye West, I've written Kanye off probably 9 times. But I saw an Instagram thing with him over the weekend where he's just killing it. I didn't mean to watch it. I really did not mean to watch it. Blame Very Smart Brothers or whoever posted it, but he's just killing it. And it's like, oh yeah, he's a genius. But it occurs to me that there's one thing as a performer where you're taking an experience and laying it bare on stage and performing that. But then you're also kind of performing as you're walking through your life.
Yes.
And when your job is to perform, I can only imagine that chaos ensues. Can you talk a little bit about the different lanes of performance, of performing wellness, of performing the act, of performing friendship? Can you talk a little bit about that?
One of the things that I had to come to terms with within the last couple of years, again, was that I had to be able to understand what was a performance and what was real. I am 40 enough years old, and I am just now learning what my actual personality is.
Wow.
Because so much of my life was spent performing. And the story that you're referring to, I think it's called Beauty in the Breakdown in the book, came about because I couldn't perform because before the tour,
Yeah.
I had moments when I could stop performing, when I was alone in my room, when I could, shut the door and just be whatever level of not okay I was on my own. But when you're on tour,
Yeah.
you have to be in the dressing room at 7, you have to be on stage at 8, you have to perform for 2 hours, you have to, all these things that are required of you, and you don't have your own schedule. I didn't have my own breakdown schedule, which is something that I've had for all, if not most of my life. And to have that removed, it made that level of performance adjustment difficult.
Yeah.
I couldn't play to the room. I couldn't play to the camera because there was always a camera around. And even within, and this is true for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, the ability to perform okay was my livelihood.
Wow.
It was my baseline.
Yeah.
So that when that got removed, I didn't know where to go, and I didn't have anything to support me from there.
Yeah.
When it comes to performance, I don't like people being uneasy around me.
Yeah.
I don't like people being uncomfortable around me. So instinctually, when somebody, just as an empath, you can see someone in their eyes, they look nervous or they're scared or they're anxious. Immediately, I rush to fill in the room. And I don't mean to do that, but I feel like there's something that has to happen because we both can't be anxious.
Right.
We both can't be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So if I'm the one who's able to step up and step in, it just kind of happens in ways that leave me. And this last week, these back-to-back book events, and having conversations with people and talking to people and hugging people and knowing that that's what people want and need. It's instinctual in ways that I don't think are healthy a lot of the times, but I feel like are necessary in the grander scheme of things. Sometimes for me, and again, that goes with what the book is about, the truth and the lying and the performance, all that comes together and congeals in that what is more important right now? The truth or the ways in which we must exist with one another.
Yeah.
So if we were sitting here and you were nervous and so nervous that you couldn't get it out, I would have to fill in that space because what's important for them and what's important for you.
Yeah.
My truth would be like, well, let them figure it out.
Right.
And that's not helpful for either of us.
Yeah.
So my emotional dishonesty, my performance is useful.
Yes.
And I know that. It's just a matter of bartering between when I give it all out in a relationship that's not, healthy for me, and when it's an interaction between people.
Fantastic. Amazing.
I hope that made sense. I
Yeah,
felt like
it
I was
made
talking all
total sense. I'm gonna read one last passage, and if anyone has questions or comments, there's a microphone right down here, down center, and you're welcome to come find it.
No pressure.
Yeah. So just a little bit about making art and hope. This is from Searching for Magic. I've been trying to figure out some way to create poetry out of this heavy, hollow something. But times like this, when it feels like even the words don't want me, I am hard-pressed to understand my purpose. Beyond the baby boy who gets me laughing and smiling and sometimes exhausted and wishing for time machines through it all. But when I put him in the high chair and turn on the backyardigans or wonder pets for 10 minutes to disappear into the hallway and press cheek against knees to stop the tears before they appear, there's been blessed little crying. There was a moment last week after the car broke down in Baltimore. There was a distinct and persistent wetness on my face, a thick in my mouth, and I allowed it. Hoped that this flooding over would be the end of it, that the water would overflow into that empty space and fill it with something, anything but this loud and frenetic nothing. I pretended that I was crying for him, pretending that it was a cracked and bruised leftover heart that was leaking motor oil all over my hoodie. I needed an easier reason to cry. Why not a hymn? There is no hymn, just me. And there is the baby boy who misses me when 20 minutes go without a song, without a new dance. He's attaching himself more these days because he knows this sadness is here, remembers it from before. So he will not sleep unless the mama is lying beside him, will not eat unless the mama holds a fork as well. So I am trying. I am lifting myself out of bed every morning to assure him Cheerios and Pinky Dinky Doo and Hip Hop Harry, and the only nursery rhymes I know sound suspiciously like Tribe and Black Star and Jeff Buckley and De La Soul and Lauryn Hill and Sam Cooke. And when he hears the first 3 lines of Billie Jean, the baby spins and laughs because he knows already. And one day, I hope he will forgive me this, because I know he knows when the mama puts him in the high chair for 10 minutes, she's probably in a hall somewhere pressing her cheek against her knees. This thing ain't easy. And I don't mean to complain, because this life is beautiful and it's magic, and I am blessed and grateful, but this brain feels broken sometimes. This brain does this thing that takes little soap bubbles of everyone feels this sometimes and morphs them into latex balloons of you're the only one in this world who can't seem to lift herself out of bed in the morning. And then the balloon becomes brick, and the brick becomes wall, and the wall is a mountain, and then you're stuck. So I'm grateful to only be latex balloon right now. But this thing ain't easy. I love your writing.
It's different when you read it.
You're a writer, man. You're a writer. You're killing it. Yeah, please. I want to ask something derivative of where you find the words from. I think my actual question is where you find the strength from. I think about athletes and performance-enhancing drugs, and I wonder if there would be any music in the world without marijuana. Like, if Bob Marley didn't have marijuana, would we have Bob Marley? I feel like performance-enhancing drugs sometimes are okay. For a writer, your experience is that drug. It is the impetus, but the crafting of words, the specific crafting of words is out of body. And so I wonder, where do you find both the hope and the strength to go beyond the experience to craft the words? Where does the making of art come from as you're experiencing this particular struggle?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I started writing around the same time I started reading, which is around the same time I started speaking and learning English. And I remember very distinctly as a child reading books and trying to understand how these either long dead or just completely far removed from my experience people were able to articulate things that I was feeling, or at least give me a sensation or give me an experience that felt like I was there, even though I would never know, a Green Gable, and I would never know, the life that Pippi Longstockings had, or Ramona, or God, whoever. The ability to do that, to feel that as a reader, fueled me as a writer. I cannot tell you where it comes from, as in I do this and I do that. I'm lost in that way. Sometimes I wonder if I should go get an MFA so I'll learn the words. Someone taught me interiority. I don't know there you are. But I wish I knew how to articulate it, because I don't. It's why for the longest time I didn't consider myself a poet, because I don't know of craft and form and onomatopoeias and this, that, and the third. I just know what it means and what it feels like to be able to write a sentence that explains something to myself, that makes me understand myself a bit better, that makes me understand somebody else a little bit better. Yeah. It's always been that search for understanding since I was a child. It's that search to understand and to be understood, whether it be my mom, whether it be someone that I thought that I was in love with, whether it be just trying to get from point A to point B in Brooklyn and wondering how somebody could imagine. People say one of the advice that people give is you put one foot in front of the other. What does that mean when you can't do that? When you can't feel your legs? And so for me, the writing is in trying to get myself to feel my legs in order to then put my one foot in front of the other. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's an answer to a question.
Yes, yes. And I'm grateful for your wisdom. Thank you. We have time, I think, for 2, maybe 3 questions. Does anybody want to holla? Yeah, please. There's a microphone right there.
Hello.
Hi.
Uh,
What's your name?
my name's Ishra Noor.
Ishra.
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
So I'm like a little nervous. My friend told me to just do it. So first of all, thank you so much for writing this book and coming out here. We feel so lucky to actually stand here and see someone who is going through the very exact same thing that I am. Like, you have the same diagnosis that I do, and you're the only person that I've ever met, like, in my whole 26 years of life that that has bipolar disorder. So, like, this is the first time I'm meeting anyone with a shared experience.
Wow.
So this has been, like, incredibly powerful for me, so I'm like kind of weird. My bad.
Thank you for being here.
My question for you is, I've been on medications now, finally the right kind of medications for me, and I feel good, and I know that my, like, friends and family are so happy for me to be normalized in this way. But something that I've been going through and talking to my therapist about is, like, I do miss the mania, and I do miss the depression, because I'm also an artist, and I just felt so deep in despair that it was beautiful. And I have felt and seen the world so beautifully when it was colorful and happy. And I haven't, in the past year or so, felt that beauty in the world since I started taking my medication. But obviously it's helped my family, and it's helped my day-to-day life. But, like, have you felt that way, and how do you deal with that now?
First of all, I'm glad you're here.
Word up.
And being able to find medication that works, that helps you, enables you to navigate the world is really important. It's very difficult. As a creative person, for the longest time, I thought that the depression gave me something to write about, and then the hypomania gave me the wherewithal to do it. But here's the thing that I learned. I learned that with the hypomania, yes, I would write 87 poems in 24 hours, but only one of them would be worth anything that I would share. One of them would be good. So without the hypomania, I can still write one good poem, right? One of the things I'm very vocal about is this idea that we need to stop romanticizing what creativity and mania do. A lot of us, and you included, we do the work despite the illness, not because of it. Because if you think about how difficult it is to, and this is something that I've been thinking about lately. I've got this, like, little wonky tooth right here because I had to get a root canal, and then it was too expensive to whatever, y'all don't need to know all this. But my point is, there was a time, the reason why my teeth are so bad, there was a time when I couldn't even get out of bed to brush my teeth. So if I couldn't get out of my bed to brush my teeth, how am I getting out of my bed to do any kind of work whatsoever? I'd rather be able to get out of bed. I'd rather be able to walk through the world. I would give up any ounce of talent I have if it meant that I didn't have to struggle with the things that people find that come easy to other people. That's me, because I will find another talent. I will find another way to express what I need to express. This book could have been written in 48 hours if I was manic, but if I were, what else? Grammar. But I wouldn't be here to talk about it. And that is the most important thing. You kept saying that it was better for your family, and I think that that's something that you might need to reframe. I'm not a therapist, so this is just my opinion. How is it better for you? And I don't mean in that you find value in how you create or you find value in how you destruct. What is it about your life and living it is important to you? Why is your wellness important to you? I'll be quite honest with you. In 2016, like I said, I was out of here, but I wanted to see Bruno Mars in concert. And I wanted to see Black Panther. And I wanted to see the original Broadway cast of Hamilton. I did all of that, by the way. But these are little things I needed to get. Like, my wellness was important until it became bigger than those 3 things that I mentioned. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what is your thing? And I'm not asking you to think about it now or to tell me now, but you need to find what that thing is, because it has to be bigger than a person or a group of people. Because when you know more than anyone else, when you fall into depression, you can think yourself out of anybody's life, but what it is about this life that's here for you that you want. And it can be as trivial or as opposite of trivial, that I can't think of word, as possible. And that's what's important. Like, I want you to consider that. I want you to consider what this life and being healthy and well means to you, not to your family. Any therapist here can tell me I'm wrong for saying that, but that's what I'm telling you, you know, BP to BP.
Word up. We definitely have time for one last question, and if I cheat, 2. Any other questions? Yes.
Patrick. All these have been family reunions. Patrick.
How you doing?
Hi.
So this is not my question. This is actually given to me by the great Miss Tony Blackman, who's in the audience also.
Tony.
Hurry.
Yeah. So how did being a poet help or hinder you in the process of writing this memoir?
You read that like a poet, too. Patrick from the Poem Cs.
There you go.
It helped because when you're writing a poem, and you know, because the great Tony Blackman, you know that you have a short amount of time to say a lot of things. And a lot of the way that poetry is written, I guess, mimics the way that my mind works. So it helped in that I was able to convey a lot of emotion, a lot of movement in short, very short lines. One of the things that I noticed when I was doing the audiobook is that the repetition of thing, and thing could mean anything depending, on where I placed it in the book, but I used the word thing a lot because there was, I don't know what the word is, but everything around the word lets you know what thing means in the context within which I used it, right? And that comes from poetry. That's poetry, metaphor, simile, finding different ways to say the thing that you want to say without actually saying it, especially when you don't know what it is that you want to say or how it's supposed to be said. You can clap for that.
Yeah. So listen, family, what is the book called?
Why do you keep asking me that? Like, you forget.
Because it's like the way that I'm Oprah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, I get it. I
see that?
see it. I see it. I'm telling the truth I'm telling the truth, but I'm lying by Bassey Ikpi.
Right on. So the book is called I'm Telling the Truth, but I'm Lying. This is the author. It is out right now on Harper Perennial Books. There are books for sale, and the author will do a little signing.
Yes, but one of the things that I've learned as far as wellness goes, just for people to know, I'm very, very clear about my boundaries. And one of those boundaries is that I would rather have a conversation with you and sign my name than give myself anxiety trying to think of a personalized inscription. So I'll just sign my name. We can talk, we can hug, we can take pictures, all that good stuff. So that's just something that of note. Okay. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
First of all, my apology, I didn't read your book. My daughter invited me for this event, and I was interested by the subject that I read. And by your interview and everything, and by your answer for the young lady, I want to know how easy, how difficult it is for a person, especially for a young person, to face the challenge of trying to find herself, her goal, and towards the family pressure. You know what I mean? With your what you said about find your own willing to face. Anyways.
So you're asking how I did
difficult,
that?
how easy it is.
Oh, it's not easy.
Yes.
It's 100% not easy.
Yeah.
I am very fortunate. Another reason why it was necessary for me to write this book is because I am very lucky, very fortunate in many ways. I have friends and especially family that are very supportive of me and have been and welcomed me back and were patient with me as I figured these things out. I have a therapist that I adore who helps me work these things out. I'm very open about the fact that this is a process for me. But more importantly, I want to be well. I want that. More than anything else in this world, I want to be well. And that, you know, like if you're going to the gym, you want a certain output. My goal when I wake up every morning is to make sure that I end that day well and emotionally well. And that means a lot of things. That means, you know, being very clear about my boundaries, going to my therapist. Now I'm better now, so we're once a month as opposed to 4 or 5 times a week, which is a blessing. But I'm very fortunate to have supportive people in my life who journey with me without getting in the way, in that I don't feel like I have to constantly protect them from me. It's work on all sides. I don't know if there's an easy answer to that, but the most important thing is that it is work, and it's a work that's worth it, and that's the only thing I can keep. It's a constant. You know, there are people who wake up and go through the day without even thinking about themselves once. I have to check in with myself every hour. Whenever I'm sitting in front of my computer and I zone out and I realize that 2 hours have gone by and I haven't been able to be present for those 2 hours, I have to check in with myself. That's not something that a lot of people do because they don't have to do that. So it's just a constant thing, and it's something that I don't even know if I'm answering that, if that's helpful, but that's the only thing I can say. It's work, and it's work that's worth it, and it's work that pays off. And the more I work, the more of the payoff. I have a book that I wrote 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago. This is not possible. This is not possible. This is not possible. And so I have to have these markers. Sorry, this is random, but attached. I was telling you about getting up out of bed, brushing my teeth. I have apps on my phone that say, what did you do today? I brushed my teeth twice. I took a shower. I washed my face. I have to keep this log. I don't anymore, but for a period of time, for like 6 months, I had to keep a log of things that other people take for granted. I had apps that told me to eat. I had apps that told me, you know, to get out of bed, to go outside, stand outside for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. If you stay longer, fantastic. If not, 5 minutes is all you have to do. And those things built on top of each other and became that same mountain that was blocking me before. I was going up the mountain. And at some point, I got to that precipice of the mountain, and I'm able to see how far I've come. And that, to me, has been like the biggest success story. Being able to look back, being able to read this book and see all, oh crap, oh, there's wine.
Libation.
Being able to see just how far I've come in a tangible way, writing all that stuff down. So I don't know if that helps, but that's an answer to your question.
Listen, y'all, the book, you talk about the work is worth it. The book is worth it, for real. This is Bassey Ikpi. This is the Kennedy Center Millennium stage. It's been such an honor. I can't wait to follow you.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
Marc, I've known Marc for over almost 20 years. I'd say a little bit over 20 years. And I saw him on stage in Union Square, Bar 13. He did this poem about his Haitian background, and he tap danced in the middle of the poem. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know who this person is, but he's the most amazing human being. And I am so grateful that you're here with me. I'm so grateful that you agreed to do this. And I'm so grateful to hear you read my words, because you were one of my favorite poets for years upon years, and then you became an actor, and it's like, what? But thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Great pleasure. This is Bassey Ikpi. She's amazing, brother. I'm so sorry, but I wish I could, but I'm telling you, I'm getting the thing. No, but what you should do is please see the author at the table. I promise you should be the first person at the table. But we have to close down right now. We're at our time.
I ain't got the money to buy the book. So
I will give you this book. Yes.
There you go.
This book is yours.
See how that happens?
Absolutely.
All right, much love to y'all. Thank you so much. Please support the work. Tell a
you guys for
friend.
being
This
here.
is the Millennium Stage.
Thank
So
you.
grateful to have y'all. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Millennium Stage. As we prepare for another performance, we ask that you help us by